40% of the fruits and vegetables are lost before reaching the consumer. The food waste problem back in US and India was completely different. That was very eye-opening for me. So being a food scientist, I don't buy packaged products which has too much chemicals in it. So if I'm developing a product, I want to bring that ethical point of view to the solution what I have.
Hi friends, welcome to Change Started, to our series Change Stayed. Just to set the context, globally, about 1/3 of our food never gets eaten. So either it is spoiled or people don't take it. And majority of that food lies in the grocery store, or the kirana stores, or the mom and pop stores, or the vegetable vendors, which never gets taken by us and it gets spoiled on through the journey. So what should we do? Have a solution in place, and we have the founder of that solution. The solution is GreenPod Labs, and the founder is Deepak. So welcome, Deepak. Thanks for joining in. So let's discuss what is the solution like. But before that, why don't you start tell us about your journey before GreenPods?
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Varun. Thank you so much for inviting me. Great to talk to you and great to explain about what we're doing and our journey so far. So before GreenPod Labs, so I have a bachelor's in agriculture engineering. That's something I did in India, and then I moved to US. So that's where I did my master's in food science. So I completed my master's in food science and worked as a food scientist for about 3.5 years. So altogether, I stayed in US for about 5 years. Decided to quit that job. Even before coming back to India, I've worked on food waste as a problem back in US as well. I've always been fascinated about this problem and being frustrated that no one was trying to solve. That was more motivation to move back to India. And then I moved back in mid of 2019. Later part of 2019 is when I started the company GreenPod Labs. So it's been about less than 2 years now.
Cool. So did you saw this problem somewhere while doing your daily shopping? Or was it like more at a macro level that you saw that there is a fundamental problem with our food wastage? How did you identify that problem?
Yeah. Great question, Varun. So I think, as I mentioned before, I've been associated with food waste in one form or the other. So back in US, I was working on a couple of projects where we were minimizing food waste from food industry.
Okay.
So the beer industry produces a lot of food waste. The wine industry produces a lot of food waste. And we worked on several products of that, several projects in that segment. That's when I was just trying to read more about the food waste, different aspects of food waste. And I always wanted to come back to India. That was my motivation for a long time. There was few companies back in US who were trying to solve the food waste in the fruits and vegetable sector.
Yes.
So that motivation was very simple. So whenever I buy a strawberry box, within a day or so, it gets spoiled. And that was a huge pain as a consumer for me. Even if it's stored in a refrigeration or whatever, it's constantly you losing that within a day or two. And then I went deeper into it and tried to understand what exactly happens. So India is the second largest producer of fruits and vegetables. And I was like, if it's the second largest producer of fruits and vegetables, our optimization should be really good. That was my thought process. And then I realized about 40% of the fruits and vegetables are lost before reaching the consumer. The food waste problem back in US and India was completely different. That was very eye-opening for me. So in US, about 35% of the food waste happens after it reaches the consumer. So consumers buy in a large quantity and then they waste the food. Whereas in India, about 40% of the fresh produce happens before it reaches the consumer. Then I was able to understand the infrastructure is not there to minimize this process. That was very fascinating for me. And that was a point where I felt like, okay, this is a problem worth solving. And my background in food engineering and food biotechnology might be a good fit to solve this problem. There were few companies working in this space back in the US when I decided to do it. And I was like, okay, the industry is also looking at it a broader perspective. There might be the opportunity for us to explore in India. So I moved back to India and been working on the product. And currently we're working with several customers to take the product to the market.
Cool. So were you familiar with the technology as such before you started GreenPods? or is it something like you have invested in R&D and you did your own R&D, figuring out how we could solve it? So now you can delve more into the solution part. How does the solution work, and what all you did before that?
Sure. As I mentioned, my background was more like a food biotechnology, and I've been involved in ingredient functionality for a long time. And the product was evolving over the period. The initial product, what I wanted to develop once I moved back to India, was more like a cold storage. That was the initial product I designed, and I spent about 3 months traveling to different villages, talking with farmers, distributors, e-commerce players, retailers, all different stakeholders. I was trying to understand their point of view with the problem and the solution. I quickly understood that a large capital intensive solution is not going to work for a market like India. That's when I dive into a technology called active packaging, which I worked in back in the US as well. So these are packaging which either releases any compounds or absorbs something. So that's a technology what's been evolving in US. I've been closely worked with that, and I have a good understanding of it. I thought, like, why not that? Why not we invest in R&D into that technology back in India to develop for the product? The science what we're using, defense mechanism science, that is very new to me. I've never worked on that before. And that was a huge learning for me. I stumbled upon that science while doing my research back once I moved back to India. And then I felt that science has not been explored a lot. Worked on the like understanding of the science, and started developing products. It took about almost 3 to 6 months to develop the first product. Once that was developed, then we've been evolving the R&D process. So I had some background, but had to do deeper R&D to develop the product. Yeah.
Fascinating. I mean, it sounds to be a very fascinating solution. I'm sure not a lot of us will understand, but if in simple words, if you can explain the technology and the solution a little bit.
Sure. So our product looks very similar to. So it's a small sachet. So whenever you buy like a leather bag or leather shoe, you find those small packets, the silica gel sachets inside the leather bag or leather shoes. So our product form looks very similar to that. So these sachets have a proprietary formulation. We use all plant extracts and edible ingredients within that packet. So what it does is, when you drop these sachets inside a fruit or a vegetable crate, there's a release of compounds within the natural compounds near the fruit and vegetable. When that is released, it slows down the ripening rate of a fruit or a vegetable, and then it controls any microbial growth. So those are the two major reasons for spoiling. So either like a crop like banana, it spoils because of over ripening. So that's one problem. For a crop like strawberries or figs or anything of that sort, it's because of microbial growth where the spoilage happens. So our product controls those two. So one end, we control the ripening rate. On the other hand, we control the microbial growth with plant extracts and plant polymer in the form of small packets. So these packets will be dropped whenever the fruits and vegetables are harvested from the farm. So once the fruits and vegetables are harvested and loaded into a crate, you drop these sachets inside that. And then throughout the supply chain and before it reaches the consumer, the quality is retained and shelf life is increased. So that's how we minimize the loss.
Cool. That is the sachet is the solution. Awesome. I mean, wish we could have done a lot earlier. So this is. I was thinking that this would be some kind of an application or some kind of a syrup or something which you would apply on the fruit or vegetable. But it is unlike that. It is just that you are keeping that sachet where the products are lying, and that itself will be enough to keep the product safe. Okay, so I'm sure you are not going to reveal what is inside those sachets. I mean, but at broad level, I mean, what are the main ingredient which is there, which is helping in this?
Sure. So as I mentioned, these are all edible ingredients what we use. These ingredients are one of the ingredients what we extract is from corn and potato. So we extract the ingredient from that, from polymer from corn and potato, and then we use that. Similar to that, we use extracts from other spices and other plants and leaves and all those things. So we use about 10 to 15 different ingredients, and across the board, we have different functionalities within that ingredient. So it's IP protected. The overall ingredient is IP protected, and that's what we use it in our product. And that differs for different crops. So we understand each crop's physiology. So each crop ripens in a different rate. Each crop has moisture level in a different way. So each crop we study, and then based on the crop's requirement, we develop a product, and that's what we sell to the customers.
That's cool. So Deepak, one more question. I mean, so how much? What would be the quantity of the product, like say particular vegetable, and this one sachet? So how much one sachet would be enough for a particular quantity of a product?
Yeah, so this one sachet can like save for about 5 to 7 kgs. So you can drop this one sachet for about 5 to 7 kgs of crop, and then it controls ripening rate and the microbial growth. It slightly differs for different crops. So for a tomato, it's 5 to 7 kgs. For a crop like figs, it's about 3 to 4 kgs. So it slightly differs, but on average, that's the volume what we can serve.
Cool. And at what stage we should put this product of yours with the vegetable?
It's at the harvest level. So the first mile integration is what we do. So after the harvest is done, at the farm gate or at the collection center is where you integrate the product. That's where you can control the ripening rate from there. So at the later stage, you can still integrate, but the control of ripening rate would be harder than, because what we do is it's similar to our immune system. So how we fight, how our immune system fights against external stress, we help the fruits and vegetables to fight against external stress. So we use the fruits and vegetables' internal ability to fight against external. So that is more appropriate at the early stages of development. So I think that's where we integrate the product.
Cool. That sounds good. So so that brings me to the question, like now you have to interact with the farmers or the producers of those fruits and vegetables, right?
Yeah.
So that is even more a difficult problem, because you have to go at the pockets at farmers and villages where all these things are getting produced. So how do you go about approaching your stakeholders and customers?
Yeah, no, great question, right? So I think we've been evolving to understand the ecosystem more. So surprisingly, the customers have been very receptive of the problem what we solved. So currently we work with about 25 to 30 customers, large customers. All the customers have been inbound requests. So we have not reached out to them. 90% of them are inbound requests. That shows the power of this problem, and people want to have a solution like what we provide. With respect to farmers, that's the same case. So farmers right now let's say for tomatoes, we are working with several tomato farmers and doing product testings with them. So it's a huge pain point. One, there's huge amount of losses at the farm level as well. The farmers get paid for the quality what they provide. So if they don't provide high level quality, they are not going to get paid much. Three, they're not able to reach new markets. If there's a price surge, let's say instead of like 10 rupees, the price is like 7 rupees, they don't have any storage capabilities to store the crop. So there are several of these problems which the farmers are facing. That's for every crop, and for a high premium crop like strawberries and mangoes and figs, the problem is even more further. So what we do is we try to enable them to increase their income by every way possible. So that's what we're doing, and the farmers have been very understanding of that and been receptive with that. So we're working with FPOs, and we also work with e-commerce players. So we work with several e-commerce players as well.
Cool. So one more question, Deepak. So traditionally, cold storages used to do that function, right? They used to keep, the farmers used to keep their fruits and vegetables in the cold storage. And then when the demand comes, a wholesaler will come and pick it up based on the need.
Yeah.
So just basis your feedback and your interaction and your research, how does it compare with the cold storage, a typical cold storage or a traditional method?
Yeah, great question. So as per the statistics, what it shows is currently the cold storage infrastructure what we have can only hold about 10 to 12% of the actual production what we have. Now might be, I mean, the statistics from like few years back, that may be at least slightly higher. So that shows that we don't have enough space to store one. Out of that segment, about like 70 to 80% is currently for potatoes, potato crop. So the overall occupancy itself is very limited for other crops. And one thing what again and again I understood is farmers are not willing to use cold storage. So there's been cases where there is access for cold storage, but farmers are not able to afford to use the cold storage. So they're not using the cold storage even if there are infrastructure in few places. That's where we provide a solution which is about 1,000 or 2,000% lower rate compared to cold storage, and we provide the same benefit or better benefit than cold storage. Currently, as mentioned, overall the number of cold storage is limited, and even if there's access, farmers are not able to afford that cold storage service. On top of that, functionally, cold storage are limited with just a controlled temperature. Sometimes cold storage does not help with minimizing the microbial growth. That's why we have a solution. One end, we slow down the ripening rate without any temperature control. Other end, we also can provide a solution which can minimize microbial growth. On top of that, cold storage, if it's not sustainably maintained, that can also release greenhouse gas emission, and that can also be a long-term damage to our climate and those challenges. So, by solving a problem which is sustainable, we cannot create a solution which is not sustainable. So I think that was our thought process. That's the reason why we felt like we want to think about long-term benefits. So if we develop a solution, it has to be sustainable for a long term.
Cool. So one more interesting thing which you pointed out is about the cost. So for the farmer to keep the cost low is also important. And as you mentioned, it would be far cheaper. Using your solution would be far cheaper than using a cold storage. And I think second most important point is the transport. So now they don't have to spend the time on logistics and transport. If they use the solution, they can keep it. So that's also interesting. So awesome.
Yeah.
So so you said some people have, some businesses have already started using your product. So how's the feedback? What was the reaction like?
Yeah, so we have not commercially sold the product yet, but we are running trials on field trials right now. And so once that's done, in another 3-4 months, we'll be launching the product. The success rate has been really good so far. So we have significantly, so on average, we increase the shelf life by 50 to 60% at room temperature, 35 degrees Celsius, without any temperature control and stuff. And we're able to retain the texture, flavor, and the overall appearance of the crop. We're also able to minimize any microbial growth. The weight loss is something we're able to minimize. So overall weight loss is a huge concern. So for every end, we've been getting good positive feedback so far. And every time we get feedback, we go back and improve our product and then launch the second version. So we're more of a software-based company. So even though we use biotechnology as a platform, but our thought process is more like a software. So we understand the customer feedback and then go back with a new iteration. So that's how we've been evolving so far. So it's been exciting.
Yes. So that brings me to the question of your team. So is it very R&D focused team? I mean, what kind of technical skills do you bring into your team and into your company?
Yeah. So right now we are a small team of 6. So primarily comprising of R&D and operations. So the founding team members is myself and Vijay. So I lead the executive side and R&D. Vijay, with about 13 years of operational experience, he's leading overall operations and business development. Apart from that, we have R&D scientists, few R&D scientists, and few operational engineers. So we are a really small team, but being very agile and working with the
But the kind of problem which you are solving, I'm sure you are very fast. You are going to make it big, very big. I'm sure it would be in a very big. So what is your plans next? How do you plan to go about scaling your business and doing other stuff?
Yeah, definitely. So we are super passionate about solving the food waste problem, and that's for multiple consequences. So food waste problem on a surface level, there's economic gain what we can do. Once you solve the food waste problem, we can manage our overall production and natural resources in a better way. The second, what we can do. Food waste problem is causing huge greenhouse gas emission and climate challenges with that. That can be managed well. There's a hunger problem that can be solved by minimizing the food waste. there's so much more what can be evolved into this solving this one problem. So we are very passionate about solving food waste in a broad perspective. So currently we are looking at fruits and vegetables. Once we crack this fruits and vegetables segment, we'll be looking at other grains and seeds. So once we crack the grains and seeds market, then we'll be expanding to milk. Once we crack milk, we'll be expanding to meat and in other products. So we'll be developing new products. That's one way of handling it. Apart from developing new products, we'll be expanding to international markets as well. So already there's been strong interest for us in Africa and other Asian countries. So once we crack for Indian market, we'll be expanding to other Asian countries and African countries and solve the food waste problem there as well. So we'll be expanding by in product and R&D perspective, we'll be expanding by market reach as well. So that's been the thought process so far. It's definitely very exciting. So yeah.
It is very exciting.
Yeah.
So though we generally do not encourage for people, I mean, people who want to live sustainable lifestyle, people should procure local produce only. I mean, they should consume whatever is available locally. But still, I mean, we cannot deny the fact that a lot of our food, especially in big cities, is getting imported from the West. You are getting avocados, you are getting apples from all over the world, right? So, and a lot of time these companies keep some liquid or something which they will stick, which doesn't make the product healthy. So I think your solution would help in that way. I'm sure.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, I stand for a reason of like not using any chemicals. So personally, I don't buy. So being a food scientist, I don't buy packaged products which has too much chemicals in it. So if I'm developing a product, I want to bring that ethical point of view to the solution what I have. That's the reason why we take that into a high priority. So we do toxicity studies on the product just to be, I mean, even though we use all plant extracts and plant polymer, we want to provide all data to show that our product is completely safe. And that's when we want to launch the product. So we take that into high priority. We don't use any chemicals. We don't use things which is not common to consumers and stuff. So we're very particular on that. And that's the stance. So I should eat the food what I'm making, what I'm doing, and if at all, if I have kids in coming years, my kids should also consume it. Whatever I can provide them, that's what I'll do. So I think that's a strong stand what I take.
Cool. And just going back to your product, is the solution using any Indian ingredient? I mean, from our age-old times, we have been using a lot of herbs and spices to make our product better, right? So, are you using anything of that sort?
Yeah, we do. In the list of ingredients, we do use a lot of Indian spice based and Indian natural ingredients. Yeah, we do use them. Yeah.
Cool.
That's one of the learned what we have gone. Yeah.
Cool. Any typical challenges you guys have faced in your last couple of years of journey?
Yeah, so I think it's been really exciting to solve the problem in one end because it is massive in every aspect. At the same time, developing a product where the science is in the early stage of evolving and doing a product which is reliable in the market, that R&D phase was very, very challenging. So getting resources and getting support while doing our R&D process was very, very challenging. We had to do everything from in-house. We built the product in-house and we tested the product in-house. And that journey was very challenging in that aspect. Along the way, working with the customers and getting feedback from them, working again and again to improve the product. That was another phase where we had to go through a lot of challenges. Now, again, we're in the scale-up mode. So we're working with manufacturers. We're trying to produce in a large scale and then move the product to the next phase. That's another phase where we're being challenged in every aspect of like scaling up the product, having a reliable quality, and taking the product to the market and moving that forward. So every stage we've had different challenges, but we just knock the door every time we have some challenge. So we want to keep moving forward because the problem what we're solving is worth solving today. So that's what is keeping us motivated. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. And all kudos to you and your team to make this happen. Final couple of questions. So what was the idea behind the name GreenPods?
Yeah. Yeah, GreenPod Labs. Yeah. So GreenPod is basically like the shell of a bean. Any beans or peas, the outer shell is what they term it as GreenPod. So what we believe is by providing like a shell for fruits and vegetables, we help them extend the shelf life. And that's the thesis what we came up with, and we wanted to be associated in that way. And green identifies that we are for sustainability, we are for the environment, and we are an R&D focused company, and innovation is our critical part. So labs comes in that way. So GreenPod in the functionality what we provide, labs because we are R&D focused. So yeah.
Interesting. Nice. Very nice. Are you guys funded, or is it something like you are looking for funding, because this would involve a lot of money, right?
Yeah. So we've been getting a lot of grants. So we focus our R&D majorly on grants, government grants and research grants. We raised a small pre-seed investment last year. So we were part of an accelerator in Europe. So part of that, we raised a small pre-seed, and we are in process of raising our seed. So we'll close around pretty soon. So it does involve investment because of R&D is pretty intense. But we are very disciplined. So we evaluate and optimize every when possible. So we are raising our seed round right now.
All the very best, Deepak. My final question, what is your personal connect with environment and nature? Just leave everything just in your personal life. How do you connect with nature and environment?
Yeah, great question, right? So I've always been really passionate about. Before moving to US as well, I've always been cautious on my consumption patterns because I was associated with agriculture. I've always been. I know the pain point of like growing the food and serving that food. So personally, I've always been very careful with respect to food, what I eat, and wastage and those things. That's been close to me, and I've communicated to as many people as possible, not wasting food, and that's very personal to me. And the other side is plastic. Plastic is a huge part of what I think, and how that has to be moved. So as much as possible, as soon as possible, I minimize single-use plastic wherever possible. I mean, it's super hard to do it. In US, I had so much opportunity. I was able to minimize that in a greater extent. In India, doing that is hardest. But wherever possible, we are doing that. We are minimizing the single-use plastic. And these two are very close to me. So one end, minimizing like personal food waste, like whatever I consume, and minimizing that personal food waste. Second, with respect to plastic, minimizing the single-use plastic as much as possible. So these two are something I've been closer to, and I've been following for a long time. And that's the evolving process. As I learn new things, I try to do more. Wherever possible, I grow my own food and try to do that. So those are the things what I've been following. But food waste and plastic is something very close to my heart.
Amazing. So thanks a lot, and all the best to you, Deepak, and to your team. You guys would do wonder.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Varun. Thank you.